Whoa, whoa.
Tell me, Zach, is Dak back?
Dak is indeed back.
Derrick Henry is one of the best running backs to ever play the game of football.
Hey, no. It's bonus time. First time that we're doing this in an actual episode. It's time for lightning fast pick.
I don't think Russell Wilson's the top quarterback in the NFL anymore.
But let's be honest here. This guy is a bona fide scrub. He can't play. But I think that Odell Beckham just keeps ending up in the wrong situations.
I'm going to go out and make a hot take right now that only one of the Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Chargers will make the playoffs.
Do you think it's safe to consider Jonathan Taylor the best running back in the league right now?
I think it is safe and sure and absolute and any other word you want to throw around in there.
I'm going to go as far to say that the Bucks this season are a divisional round exit. They won't make it past the second round of the playoffs. I personally think that if Mike Zimmer lasts until next season, then whoever upper management is at the Minnesota Vikings facility needs to be fired, and then new upper management needs to fire Mike Zimmer. I think we just might see the Rams pull off an upset against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alright everyone, welcome back to the Lockup Shutdown podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me as always is my good friend Zach. With Super Bowl weekend finally upon us after some 20 plus weeks of football and hosting this podcast throughout its debut season, tell me Zach, how's it going tonight?
It's going off, and you can never complain as a football fan when it's Super Bowl time, and yeah, you said it that this is probably the last one for a while. Seems crazy that thing we were talking about week one just a few weeks ago, and now there's only two teams left and it's Super Bowl time and it's already February, so time goes quick. But I guess they say time goes quick when you're having fun, and the season's been a lot of fun, this podcast's been a lot of fun, and let's finish it out before we head into the off season.
Absolutely. Next week we'll be recapping the season at last. Make sure you like, subscribe, stay tuned for that. Click that notification bell so you're not missing out. But today we're discussing Super Bowl 56, from OBJ's impact on the Rams to the NOLA connection that has seemed to bring the Bengals above everybody else in the league and more. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. Tom Brady is gone. Cue the celebration music. After a career bringing him 7 Super Bowl rings and 10 appearances, including the most Super Bowl MVPs with 5, the most wins by a quarterback, alongside the most career passing attempts, completions, yards, and touchdowns, Zach, how does it feel to be free at last from Tom Brady's reign of terror? Quite literally the end of an era.
Yeah, the end of an era, the end of a legacy, the end of, I don't even know if there's words to describe it, but you named all the accolades and stats and whatever else, but I think you got to say there might not be a better athlete in any sport better than Tom Brady has been in football. And he is now finally retired. I think I'm going to enjoy it for maybe a year or two, but then I'll probably start to miss Tom Brady just because I think everyone took it for granted that how good he was. You think of the great quarterbacks, and then if it's a consensus agreement that Tom Brady's better than any other quarterback to ever play, just shows how good he's been. You can't even get people to say that Michael Jordan's the best of all time in his sport. You can't really come to a consensus agreement on any best player of any sport besides Tom Brady being the best football player of all time.
Well, I don't know.
I think he's just proven how good he can be, how good he was. and we'll miss him on the football field.
Well, I don't know about the best athlete of all time by any means. I would consider some other athletes, especially Bo Jackson, Michael Jordan, just general multi-sport athletes I consider to be better athletes overall, but by all means, Tom Brady is the consensus GOAT in terms of football, and it's certainly going to be interesting. I've lived my whole life with Tom Brady being a starting quarterback and winning Super Bowls, and all of a sudden, that's not the case anymore, so it'll be very interesting.
It is Super Bowl weekend. It is Super Bowl weekend, so I guess we had to talk about Tom Brady, and he'll go out the right way, keeping his name relevant as the Super Bowl comes around.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. We could be talking about these Super Bowl topics, and we are about to right now. So let's talk about the Rams first. I want to talk specifically about Odell Beckham Jr., who was traded to the Rams from the Cleveland Browns. No, not traded. He was released by the Browns, wasn't he?
He was indeed, and
So
Browns probably could have gotten a lot more from him, but yeah, going off that, they were just so ready to get rid of him that they didn't even care what they got back. They viewed the loss of OBJ as what they'd be getting back as a gain.
Well, it certainly is a loss for them indeed. So let's just talk about the fact that OBJ is in his first ever Super Bowl. What does this first Super Bowl appearance mean for OBJ and the situation between him, Baker Mayfield, and the Browns from earlier this season?
Yeah, that's a complicated situation to unpack. You had on the field issues, off the field issues, and in the end, I think both teams are going to come out better than where they were had OBJ stayed. The Rams obviously improved. Hard to tell what would have happened had Robert Woods stayed healthy and they had Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and OBJ, which would have been scary, but OBJ's been there to be the perfect replacement after Robert Woods did tear his ACL and is a huge part of the Rams making the Super Bowl. But I also think him being released by the Browns is going to help the Browns in the long run. I think once you have a name attached to a team like OBJ's, draw all the attention. That attention isn't really what the Browns need right now. I think if you are able to just get a few under the radar names, keep your egos in check, that's what the Browns are trying to do. And I think the release of OBJ may look dumb right now, but whether they had OBJ or didn't have OBJ, the Browns weren't going to do anything this season. I think getting rid of him is going to keep the locker room happy and wasn't going to change the result of too many wins or losses that they had this season.
I think you're on the right track, but I don't think you're on the right track for the right reasons. I think it's very clear at this point that OBJ was never the issue to begin with, but I think that this entails that the lack of Brown success for the last few years is either from internal flaws in Cleveland or from Baker Mayfield himself. But I'm going to stick with what I said earlier this year and say it's probably both, and I think this particular situation is probably going to help the Browns reveal these glaring holes that they have going on. I think it's clear that it's better for both sides of the equation if Baker Mayfield either moves on or gets traded by next season. There's a lot of teams in the league right now with new roles to fill, whether that's Green Bay if Rodgers decides to leave, Tampa Bay now that Brady has retired, Seattle if Russell Wilson pursues a trade, and whoever else. Baker Mayfield needs to see himself fulfilling a role in a jersey that isn't orange and brown next season. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the Browns have a lot of problems. It is a very, very, very bad franchise, and it's clear at this point that something needs to change, and I'm hoping that the Browns GM, the Browns coaching staff, someone needs to realize that something is going on, and someone needs to fix it. And I think that, yes, this will be beneficial to the Browns in the long run, but only because it has exposed this clear issue going on.
Yeah, there are multiple issues, like you said. Baker Mayfield is not a great quarterback. I think those quarterbacks you named, like the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilsons, almost anyone else around the league would have been able to find that connection with OBJ and just at least get some respectable games. But Baker Mayfield didn't have that connection with OBJ, and I think that was one of the issues. But you also said it, having Kevin Stefanski and the list of other issues with the Browns. They've had issues for years and years and years. It's almost crazy to think that them going 8-8, going around 500 is exponentially better than what they were at 3 or 4 years ago when they go 0-16, 0-17. So they've had issues for years, and hopefully the Browns coaches, whoever they're going to be next year, are able to rid the Browns of what they are currently in and get them on the right track going forward.
Well, it would certainly help if they took some advice from another AFC North team who has gone from just 6 wins a few seasons ago to now being in the Super Bowl. And now that they are Super Bowl bound, is it time to admit that the Bengals won the offseason this year?
I think it is indeed time to admit that they won the offseason. They had great offseason. They've been great past 2 off seasons, I feel like. Getting Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, got Jamar Chase. So if there's a key player, they've probably joined the Bengals in the last 2 years. And I think that's the key to how the Bengals have gone from winning 6 games to almost winning 6 games this month in the playoffs. And here they are in the Super Bowl getting ready to face the Los Angeles Rams. Will give you a list of a few key players they've signed in the last 2 years. They signed Von Bell, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Logan Wilson, Trey Hendrickson had a big game, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, Eli Apple, Jamar Chase, and then you forgot maybe the best player on the Bengals, and Evan McPherson. So the Bengals
never draft a kicker, they say.
Yeah, go back to the debates we've had between whether a quarterback and a kicker is more important. I think Evan McPherson is putting his name up there as to how important a kicker might be. But no, the Bengals have turned themselves into a legit contending team, obviously. And I think no one really expected this 2 years ago. If you would have said Joe Burrow and the Bengals are going to play in a Super Bowl, you would have been laughed at. But I also think the only other thing crazier than that is saying that Joe Burrow will be playing Matt Stafford in a Super Bowl 365 days ago. So that's where we are now. Teams have improved, and credit to them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you here. I want to delve a little bit more in depth, however. The signing of Trey Hendrickson to a 4-year, $60 million deal was considered by a handful of people to be overpaying. They overpaid on this guy that there's no way he's just going to repeat this 2020 campaign with the Saints where he had 13 sacks, and yet he's done all of that and more, and has been a key piece in this entire Super Bowl run. I think but at this point, Trey Hendrickson has completely shut down all of the haters that he's had, at least in the last year. Signing Mike Hilton turned out to be an incredible choice earlier this season after he exploded onto the scene late in the season. And what can't be said about the Bengals drafting Jamar Chase? We've mentioned it so much, but people were convinced that he was a bust after stories that he couldn't see the ball because it doesn't have the white stripes like how the NCAA ball does. It was complete BS, and yet he has had one of the most incredible seasons we have probably ever seen out of a rookie. The Bengals did everything right in the offseason and the offseason before, maybe even the offseason before. And ultimately, that's why they're playing football on Sunday and whatever other team in the league is currently not.
Yeah, they've been creating this key run with pieces out of the ordinary. I don't think many people would have thought of Trey Hendrickson as being a key piece to a Super Bowl team, and I think he's been one of their best defenders the entire season and had the lucky job of chasing Patrick Mahomes around all game on last weekend when they were playing the Chiefs, and I remember him just running around. I think Patrick Mahomes had 8 seconds before he threw the ball, and Trey Hendrickson was chasing him for about all 8 of those seconds, and then runs over to the sideline and has to lean up against where the kicker is kicking his field goal into the net just because he can't stand up and breathe because he's been running around all game. And I think it just goes to show you how hard he's been working, and he's proven he's worth all $60 million or whatever you said he signed his contract for. So credit to the Bengals, credit to their front office and Zach Taylor and everything else that they've done the past few years to put this Super Bowl run together.
Absolutely. And again, both of these teams deserve some credit for the acquisitions they've made in the last couple of seasons, specifically this offseason and even this season. And in the Rams' case, they had a lot of different acquisitions, both in preseason and midseason, that arguably could have been better for them in one way or another. So tell me, Zach, were the Rams' midseason acquisitions or preseason acquisitions more valuable to their Super Bowl run this season?
I'm going to have to say that their preseason acquisitions were more important than the midseason acquisitions that they made. I think getting Matt Stafford and Sony Michel is helped them a lot more than getting OBJ. I don't think the Rams are making this Super Bowl run with Jared Goff at quarterback, and I think that Matt Stafford's also been one of the reasons why Cooper Kupp has had one of the best individual seasons ever seen before, and is continuing that in the playoffs. We saw Matt Stafford and how much, I guess you'd call it, potential he had in Detroit, just because he never materialized into too much because there wasn't any talent around him. But as soon as you put talent around him, he's been a legit quarterback this season. Second in the league in touchdowns, third in the league in yards, fourth in QBR. So he's been a consistent piece for this Los Angeles Rams team. And I think quarterback's the most important position on the field. And once you get one of the best quarterbacks in the league to put around everyone else that the Rams had already acquired, that is why they're in the position they are now.
Interesting. I, on the other hand, am willing to argue the opposite. I'm willing to argue that the midseason acquisitions meant more to this team than the preseason acquisitions. Yes, even despite the Stafford-Goff trade, not to gloss over that or anything, but ultimately, here's what I think. Von Miller has brought even further dominance to this Rams D-line than we've ever seen before. You have to double Von Miller. You have to at least double, if not triple, if not quadruple, Aaron Donald. This Rams pass rush is unbelievable, and come Sunday night, it's going to be the key factor, if not at least a key factor. The skill set that OBJ has brought to the wide receiver core revived the Rams offense as they started to slow down midway through the season, obviously, which we had seen after the trade deadline. I think that without OBJ, Kupp doesn't even come close to the record. Matthew Stafford doesn't come close to this point in the playoffs, and this team just doesn't look nearly the same as we've seen them. I've seen some weak throws out of Stafford all season, but ultimately, OBJ as a second option to Cooper Kupp has been a key point in this offense. Von Miller as a second option to Aaron Donald has been a key point in the defense, and the Rams' midseason acquisitions have just meant so much to getting them to this point that I think that they were more important.
You could also argue that maybe their postseason acquisitions were more important as well, with Eric Weddle coming out of retirement to play for the Rams and then leading the team in tackles in the NFC Championship. But no, obviously Eric Weddle isn't the most important acquisition, but he has played an important role for this team. And I think that Cooper Kupp was already having the season he was going to have early on before OBJ got there. And yes, obviously, Kupp's had a better season because OBJ's been there and done better than he would do without him there. But I think that if he's not there, Van Jefferson is fully capable of having a good season as well, and he just hasn't had to have that great of a season because there's so many other pieces in front of him. Tyler Higbee's there as well. You got Cam Akers, Sonny Michel in the backfield as well, splitting reps. So it's hard to say what piece it is that pushed the Rams over the edge, but I think if I had to pick between the two of Matt Stafford, Sonny Michel, or Von Miller and OBJ, I'd just have to take Matt Stafford just because of how important a quarterback is to a team that's going to be successful. We've seen Tom Brady make, obviously he's not an ordinary quarterback, but make receivers that you wouldn't think of as great receivers, turn them into what looks like a good receiver. And you look at every other team in the playoffs, everything that they have in common is they all have a good quarterback and then other pieces around them. Some have a good running back behind the quarterback, some have good receivers, some have a good defense, but there's not a team in the playoffs that doesn't have a good quarterback the last few weeks. The Bengals got Joe Burrow, Titans, the Niners, the Packers, the Rams, the Bucks, Bills, Chiefs. So I think with how reliant every team is on their quarterback, getting the Matt Stafford over Jared Goff is why the Rams are hosting the second straight Super Bowl at home.
This is certainly a very interesting argument here, and you can leave yourself an opinion in the comments below, but let's move on to our final question before we give our all-knowing Super Bowl picks. But first, let's talk about some chemistry here. I know, boring, right? Chemistry. But we're talking about team chemistry, because most of the Bengals players have had, at some point in their path, led them through New Orleans or Louisiana, just as a whole, that general area, right? With the NOLA connection running strong throughout a handful of the Bengals' key players, do you think their chemistry is what has brought them as far as it has?
Depends on what you mean by chemistry. I think their off the field chemistry has led them further than their on the field chemistry. The level that these players are at right now, whether Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase played in college together or not, they were still going to be a deadly combination. You put a great quarterback and a great wide receiver together, they're going to get a connection after, 17 weeks in the regular season, and then 4 or 5 games after this. They've already played 20-something games together just this season, and I think, yeah, it might help in week 1 and week 2, but once you get to week 17, week 18, you get to the Super Bowl, I don't think them playing their freshman years in college together is gonna make too much of a difference in what they're doing right now.
What about
it's great
off-field chemistry?
Yeah, just off-field chemistry. They all like to play with each other. They all enjoy hanging out with each other. No one's gonna want to go, and that's why quarterbacks get different gifts for their offensive linemen, because they realize the work that they're all putting in. And I think sometimes in pro sports, you realize you're a professional and everyone wants to be that best player, wants to be the highest paid player on the team. And I think the Bengals coming out of nowhere is what sparked this off the field chemistry that if you like each other off the field, you're going to do more for each other on the field, in that none of them were the best players on their team. None of them are all pro selections, all team of the year, all first team, whatever you want to call it. None of them were like that. They're all guys that were underrated most of their career, aren't getting the Sports Center highlights every night. And when you put all that together, I think they bonded really well, and that's why they've gone from a team with 6 wins in the last 2 years to now being a Super Bowl contending team that is 60 minutes away from winning a Super Bowl.
I mean, at this point, you might as well call the team the New Orleans Bengals with the amount of, New Orleans, Louisiana players coming through. I think that the chemistry of this team is by far the biggest factor. And I think Zach Taylor built this team this way for that particular reason. The off-the-field chemistry that these guys have, the amount they relate to each other, is through the roof. Any given team can load up with talent and make the playoffs and stall out. Cowboys. But it takes a team that works well together and plays to each other's talents in order to get to the Super Bowl like this. When every player on your team knows and relates to the other, it doesn't take some crazy elite talent to get this far, even though they certainly have crazy elite talent. I feel like chemistry is one of the most overlooked intangibles when it comes to any sport. A team with chemistry just doesn't work out. It doesn't get you rings. It doesn't get you the hardware. And thankfully for Cincy, that's just not the case for them. I think this chemistry is their biggest factor, and I think it's going to lead to a very interesting Super Bowl.
Yeah, they've found that connection. I think Zach Taylor is a key piece as well. Coach leading by example, setting the standards high in that locker room for what he expects from these players, and they've lived up to those expectations, and that's why they're in the position they're at. That chemistry takes hard work. It just doesn't happen because you want it to happen, and that's why they're so special of a team. And I guess you don't really, in the Super Bowl right now, I don't remember the last time you had 2 quarterbacks that you can almost say you want both of them to win the Super Bowl. And yeah, there is really no reason to hate the Bengals. They've done it the right way. They've got the right pieces, the underdog story coming from so many of them, and just keeping their heads down and doing the job that they're asked to do, and then doing whatever else they can do to help their team.
To be fair, the first time Patrick Mahomes made it, I think we all wanted him in. Now we're just sick and tired of him. But let's move on. We've talked about everything that has led up to this point in the Super Bowl, but ultimately what it comes down to is a final score and who ends up in the win column. It's our final for this season Lightning Fast picks, and we'll recap how well we did next week. Again, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So start us off, Zach, and tell me your Super Bowl prediction. I want a score. I want a winner.
So I'll tell you what I've realized from doing these Lightning Fast Picks playoff edition is that when I say an AFC team is going to win, an AFC team is going to win. The AFC side of my bracket has been perfect from the start. I said I was high on the Bengals that night, and I loved that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase connection, as well as I said an AFC North defense with a good quarterback, a good wide receiver is going to go pretty far, and that's exactly what they've done. Shutting down the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs, shutting down the Derrick Henry-led Titans, and yeah, the Rams have got a special offense, but it's nothing the Bengals haven't come up against before, and I think I'm going to stay with the Bengals. Been riding them all throughout the playoffs, and I wouldn't want to jump off the bandwagon now, so I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals over the Los Angeles Rams
with a final score of 31-24. High scoring game maybe, but I think that the weapons the Bengals have on offense with Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they're going to find a way to break through this Rams defense. And if you can get the ball out before Aaron Donald gets to you, then I think the Bengals will find success against this Rams defense.
Now, my brackets certainly weren't as good as my regular season picks. I guess I just happened to stall out in the playoffs just like the Cowboys always do, but you know, I've bet against the Bengals twice now in the last 2 weeks between the Titans game and the Chiefs game. I said that the Titans were going to win. I said that the Chiefs were going to win. I was wrong twice. I can't possibly be wrong a third time. We're talking about Aaron Donald and Von Miller against probably the worst offensive line in the game of football. They just went out and torched one of the best offensive lines in the game of football. I think it's going to be surprising if Joe Burrow doesn't end up getting sacked 10 times, double-digit sacks in one singular game. We're going to see a very defensive-dominant game with very exciting offenses going out on the field and doing their best to get past it. And I think in the end of the game, we're going to come down to a close one. It's going to be a 24-21 win by the Los Angeles Rams in their home stadium, where they'll probably still only have about 25% Rams fans again.
That was embarrassing from the Rams and how little fans they had at the biggest game ever played at SoFi Stadium until the Super Bowl. But yeah, the Rams got it done. Fans are not. So I guess we did start the season talking about how much of an impact a crowd is going to play on a game.
I was wrong about that.
And we're finishing the game talking about how much a crowd will affect the game. But yeah, I don't think crowd's going to have too much of a factor in this game. And who would want to go Super Bowl when you can just sit at home and watch the commercials that they're going to have on as well? But no, it is going to be a fun Super Bowl regardless of who wins. But we'll have to take Joe Burrow over Matt Stafford. Bengals have been the underdog, continue to be the underdogs, and if you can beat Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, I hope you can beat Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp.
And OBJ.
But yeah, and OBJ.
Sonny Michel and Van Jefferson, and yeah, it's a lot.
I think there's too much talent on both of these offenses that it is going to come down to which of these defenses can rise to the occasion on the day. Defensive coordinators both got their work cut out for them. I wouldn't want to be in that position right now, but that's why they're getting paid a lot more than I'll ever be getting paid to talk about football.
Well,
and we'll see what they come out to do on Sunday night.
Well, if there's somewhere I'd like to be on Sunday night, it would be under the roof at SoFi Stadium, one of the most beautiful stadiums in all of America, but unfortunately, that's not going to be me or you, I imagine. But let's wrap things up. That's all we have time for. What a wonderful season we've had up until this point. We've made our final picks, and next week we'll be recapping them. How are we feeling at this point in the season going into one of the most exciting Super Bowls we'll probably ever watch in a long time?
Yeah, it is bittersweet, like you said, to have such an exciting Super Bowl. You get excited just talking about it, thinking about it. But then you realize there's only 60 more minutes of football that's going to be played in the next 6 or 7 months that actually counts for anything. And then after what this season has done, it's crazy to think we went from talking about almost anything and everything before the season and trying to put something like this together, and now it's 20 weeks later doing our 21st episode, and here we are talking about Joe Burrow winning a Super Bowl and only two teams left standing. So I guess that's a typical football season, and it is bittersweet every time it happens. And this just happens to be the 2022 edition of the NFL season coming to an end. So excited for next season already, just based off all the headlines we're getting before this season is even officially over, from Tom Brady may be leaving, Aaron Rodgers might be leaving, Big Ben's already confirmed his retirement. So
Washington Commanders
are gonna
wrong about that. You'd know when this was recorded.
be around. But no, it is gonna be a really, really fun season next year, and we'll be talking about that analysis as the off season goes on, but we'll be taking a little bit of a break after this episode comes out.
After the recapped episode comes out. But yes, it's the wrap up to the 2022 version of the NFL, and it's the wrap up to the 2022 version of the Lockup Shutdown podcast. We'll certainly be coming back with bigger and better and prettier, whatever else you want to throw in there. This has been a wonderful season, and we'll certainly bring it all to a close next week. But until then, it's time for us to lock up and shut down.